Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jackie Orr from NASCAS. Welcome to our fourth series of 5 webinars around ACSI best practices, and we're going to be focusing on training and technical assistance. But before we get started, I wanted to let you know that all of you are unmuted on our end. So please, on your end, mute yourself so we don't have any interference and we'll be able to hear the presenters. Well, as we have in the last few webinars, we'll hold questions to the end so that all the presenters have a chance to present their information, and then we'll take some time to ask questions. So if you're thinking about questions or you have them, make sure you write them down so you can remember them. And please don't put us on hold. If you put us on hold, oftentimes we'll hear the hold music, and then that becomes problematic. Okay, so with all that housekeeping, we're recording these as we have for others, and we'll be sure to share both the recording with you as well as the presentation. With that, I'm going to get started. Our presenters for today are Adrian Angel from Illinois. He's the Community Services Block Grant Program Manager. Silva from Vermont, the Director of Office of Economic Opportunity, is also with us, along with Matt Fitzgerald at the Virginia State Office. He's the Community Service Program Manager. I will be doing a brief update, and then Kate Blunt will also be talking about using ACSI for continuous improvement. And Kate has been working with us very closely on this whole process for the ACSI and the best practice webinars. In the past, Bill Boldick from OCS has also joined us, and he had been prepared to join us today as well to welcome all of you to the webinar. But as you know, with the government shutdown, which looks like that might be a very brief one, with that, he was not able to join us for the webinar today, so we're hoping he'll be back next Monday. The goal of the webinar is to give an overview of best practices, specifically around training and technical assistance that offices provide to local agencies. And today we're going to specifically address the effectiveness of the training and technical assistance that's provided, the responsiveness of staff to requests for training and technical assistance, and then the overall amount of training and technical assistance that's provided to the network. So then what we will do is, for those of you that here, we're getting some interference, so please make sure you are live. Again, mute your lines, we're getting some interference. I will give an overview of the best practices work group. As I mentioned, Kate will talk about continuous improvement, and at that point, we then have the presentations from the individual state offices, leaving time for questions and answers. The purpose of the work group that's been meeting since I think our first meeting was in April, May, was for the state offices to share examples and approaches and strategies they used that were sort of the reasons why that they scored well in the areas that were scored by ACSI. And I know Kate Blunt always refers to these as the drivers of satisfaction. So on the screen you can see the drivers of satisfaction. And as I mentioned today, we're going to be specifically focusing on training and technical assistance. Now, the ACSI Best Practices Work Group, the group that I mentioned that's been meeting, these are the folks that have been a part of the work group. Now, these states were the states that scored in the top 5 in at least one of the areas surveyed. And this is the survey that was done in 2015, because this group started meeting before the 2017 ACSI was released. So you see the states: California, Colorado, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Nebraska, Nevada, South Dakota, Vermont, Virginia, and Wisconsin. And all these states didn't necessarily score in the top 5 in all of those areas. It may have been just one area, it may have been 2, it may have been multiple areas. but they did score in the top 5 in at least one of those drivers of satisfaction. Now, as I mentioned, we first met as a full work group, and what we wanted to do is we decided we were going to establish subgroups, so that these subgroups were comprised of the states that scored highest in each of those areas. So the subgroups over the summer met to share examples and approaches and strategies with each other. And the whole intent when we were doing this process was to share their approaches, their best practices, their promising practices with all of the state office network. So we actually started that with a session we had at the NASCAS conference in September, which some of you may have joined. We did a session on communications and communications and linkages. Was that the one we did at the conference? It seems like it was a long time ago. And that went over. That was very conversational. The offices talked about their approaches and examples and strategies, and we repeated that. That was our first webinar that we did, and then from there on, we've done we're in the process of doing all of the other drivers of satisfaction via webinar. We have one final one that we'll be talking about at the end of this webinar. But now I'm going to turn it over to Kate Blunt, who's going to talk to us about using the ACSI for continuous improvement. And welcome, Kate. Nope, are you still there?
Oh, you are. Yeah, sorry. I forgot to unmute myself again. So that's the next slide. Presented this the last 3 webinars, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, presuming most people on the phone have heard this, but it occurred to always kind of give a context and if anybody new is on the phone, just to connect up why OCS is using the ACSI. I mean, its intent is to help it and the states focus continuous improvement efforts, obviously to become more efficient and effective in each of the areas that were surveyed, each of those driver areas, which, as I'm sure you all understand, are tied directly to state accountability measures. So improvement in the ACSI score and the drivers means more efficient and effective operations regarding the state accountability measures. So continuous improvement, what's that all about? That requires measuring where you are, get back, which is what the ACSI is all about, then the changes, which is what this best practices work group and these webinars are about, giving you some ideas about possible strategies or things you could do differently, and then measuring again to see how that's worked, and then continuing the cycle. The next ACSI survey is not scheduled until 2019. That gives the states plenty of time to, use their data, make the changes, and then be ready for that next measurement. Next slide. So let's look specifically at, and you've seen this before, but specifically at the ACSI. Very quickly on the data, as you know, the customer satisfaction index went up 6 points, 71, which is a quite good score. The federal government overall score is 68. And each of the drivers, each of those 7 areas went up in 2017 from 2018 or from 2015. And some of the impacts, which are the numbers in the orange square, some of those changed a bit, but the top impact, the top that affect the score have to do with communication, monitoring, TNTA, which is what we're talking about today, and linkages. So each of your state reports, FI group who administered the survey and are the experts on the ACSI, gave you some suggestions about which of those 4 areas to particularly focus on. Next. The overall index, as I mentioned, the score went from 65 to 71, but more importantly, each of the 3 areas that make up the overall satisfaction, which is overall satisfaction, satisfaction compared to expectations, and satisfaction compared to the ideal, also went up, which is quite good news. And for that was based on, increases were based on the fact that many states, most states took the continuous improvement challenge very seriously, made a lot of changes. So many states saw improvements, but 14 states saw significant increases in their CSI score from 2015. And this really drove that increase in CSI up about 6 points. So hopefully we'll be able to continue and have even more states have increases between now and 2019. So let me turn it over to, oh no, there's one more thing. Let's look specifically at the training technical assistance scores, which is what we're focused on today. As I mentioned, this has a pretty high impact, 0.8. This whole area went up 7 points, which is really quite good. All related, question-related sub-drivers went up. Responsiveness of staff, effectiveness of training, effectiveness of assistance, and the amount of training and technical assistance all went up. Clearly, and they're all above 70. So it's a good place for us to be. Obviously, training and technical assistance is important to the network. The scores among the states, however, did range from a low of 17 to a high of 89. So that's something, why we're looking at best practices to help those states that need a little bit more of a push figure out what more they could do. Next slide. The comments we heard about, because we asked the open-ended question of what, if any, additional training or technical assistance would you want the state agencies to cover. And I read these, and each of you got your own comments from on your individual state reports. A lot of focus is still on Roman Next Generation, the reporting requirements, a lot of things that are going to be coming up and kind of going to be the focus over the next few months. Needs assessment, and obviously there was some interest in having around anti-poverty strategies and missions, like expanding into housing and property ownership. So there's a focus both on the reporting and the use of data as well as anti-poverty things. Next, I did provide some summary of some of the suggestions that came from the response to the survey. And you can see these: better training on process with web-based, better training on application process with web-based place to reference rather than multiple PowerPoints, training that relates to organizational standards, the Roman Next Generation. These were some of the things. Nothing terribly surprising there, but as I mentioned, each of you got your own state responses. So with that, let's turn it over to Adrian and Matt, and we're going to start with Adrian to talk about how they approach training and technical assistance in their states.
They might be muted on.
Sorry, is Adrian, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Beautiful. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Terrific. There you go.
I'm Adrian Angel from the state of Illinois. And here in Illinois, the CSBG program is located in the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We're Office of Community Assistance within that department. The Office of Community Assistance for the CSBG program, the LIHEAP program, and the weatherization program. And for the most part, we are the same entities. There's just a couple variances in there. So when we look at the CSBG staff, we actually have two staff that work solely in the CSBG program. Myself as a program manager, and I have an assistant program manager also. We have 6 grant managers that we share with the LIHEAP staff. And the grant managers go out and they do the on-site monitoring for both CSBG and LIHEAP, depending on the time of year and all that stuff. Then we have 3 fiscal monitors with both the LIHEAP and weatherization staff. They go out and actually do a joint monitoring of the fiscal stuff for the LIHEAP and weatherization and CSBG programs, all three, to get a more holistic view of the agency. And their funding level is $33,322,382. They're made up of 36 community action agencies, of which 25 of them are private agencies, 11 are public agencies. One is a statewide migrant organization, or we also have one statewide migrant organization that we fund with our discretionary dollars, and we also have a state association that we fund with the discretionary dollars. So the training and technical assistance portion of it. Basically what we do, and I think I messed up and went a slide too far, and I don't know how to go back.
I'm controlling it. Let me go back. No,
maybe I can go a slide too far. Maybe I forgot how my slides were. The assessment so the first thing we do when we're talking about training and technical assistance, we have a master trainer at our association that always pounds into my head that I should try and make everything fit into the ROMA cycle. So when we're talking about how we do our training and technical assistance, you're going to see that we follow the ROMA cycle the most part on it. The first thing we do is we do an assessment of the training and technical assistance needs. So what we do is we conduct an annual survey that we administer the survey to the agencies. We have one survey that we send to the executive directors, one we send to the CSBG coordinators, and then a third survey that we send out to the board chair. Each of these surveys are pinpointed towards their roles. So obviously the CSBG coordinators get one that's pinpointed towards program-specific topics. The board is more board-related stuff, and executive directors are a more holistic approach of the agency. We also coordinate with the Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies. We coordinate with them on what kind of surveys they've conducted throughout the year. They do the RPIC stuff for us, and so through that coordination of coming up with the RPIC and all that. We also identify the TNTA needs through both the on-site and desktop monitoring of agencies. And the last thing we take into consideration is the national level guidance. So that we in tune with what NASCAP is talking about, or the guidance we get from OCS, and try and pinpoint some of our training and technical assistance to what they're sending us. So the planning phase of the training and technical assistance, we basically have five separate categories. We have CAA specific training, so that would be training that maybe one agency has identified that we work on. Do some one-on-one training also. We do webinars, we do some classroom style training, and we do some statewide coordinated training. So specific training. So these are the needs that are identified by the CAA that are fairly much unique to them. It's also training that maybe the state or the association don't have the expertise in that subject matter to be able to properly train them. So what we started doing is we started off by giving them $5,000, and now we've increased that up to $7,500. So what we do is out of our discretionary funds, we give each agency discretionary money. Like I say, right now $7,500. The plan is hopefully one day to go up to $10,000 per agency, and that's restricted use money for them just to use for their training and technical assistance needs. The next of it is we do a lot of one-on-one training, and that's kind of broke out into the state grant management team does some of it, and the state association does some of it. So on the state grant management team side of it, they're identified by two different ways. Sometimes we have an agency reach out to us requesting training or technical assistance. Examples of this would be they reach out letting us know they have a new coordinator or new fiscal officer or something like that they would like us to come out and do some training on the programs with them. The other way we find this is we identify the training and technical assistance needs during either the on-site monitoring or desktop reviews that we do, we can oftentimes identify training and technical assistance needs. Then the state association also provides training. This is more peer-to-peer type training. And sometimes we have found that our community action agencies feel more comfortable reaching out to the association to ask for technical assistance help as opposed to us reaching out to us because they're afraid of the punitive or whatever. So those to the association request training from them. There's also times that we identify systematic problems within an agency, and we'll realize that the association is basically the subject matter experts on those. So then we'll call our association and ask them to conduct the peer-to-peer with an agency. So those are two different ways that's taken care of. So the webinars, and what we try and do, the state and the association work together at the beginning of the year to try and determine the topics based on those survey results. Then the association, so we plan who does that, whether it's the association or the state, based on who we feel is more the subject matter expert on those. At times we also will call in other people, such as a PA firm, or we've called in NACASP or the partnership to come in and do some training for us. Once we've identified who's going to be doing the training, the association will submit a schedule to us, to the state, of proposed webinars and timeframes that they plan on doing. And then at the same time, the state will develop a schedule to provide webinars, and we try and do it on at least a quarterly basis. So in the last, we've done webinars on our new online monitoring tool that we utilize. We've done a Roma Next Generation crosswalk type training. Then we've done webinars on our system updates because we have a statewide system that they use, organizational standards, and we've done on the IS annual report. So we also will schedule throughout the year additional webinars as things come up, maybe when there's changes in rules or there's some sort of off-the thing that arises throughout the year. So of training that we do is more of a classroom setting. We primarily depend on our state association to conduct this type of training for us. And the agencies, the association will send out an email, and once they send out an email on the trainings that they're going to offer, the state tries to follow that up with a email supporting what the association is doing. And each agency kind of determines whether they want to participate in it. There's a variety of topics. The ongoing ones that they do are things like Roma trainer or Roma implementer classes, family and community development training, case management type activities, and board training. Then the last kind of training that we do is the statewide training, which are more workshops that are held in conjunction with our annual meeting. That's we feel based results of the surveys or monitoring that all the agencies should be involved in. So we try and always couple that. We moved our annual meeting from just a one-day meeting to a two-day meeting. The first day having a series of breakout sessions that we talk about the various training topics that we've chosen. State Association also holds workshops, and they do that a lot in association with their annual meeting that they hold. And the thing that we do is those high topics that they come up throughout the year, it seems like we usually hold one statewide roundtable at least a year to cover any changes or things such as that. So then the thing is, with that Roma theme is, you know, we try and look at the achievement of our results. How do we do in giving the training? So most of our trainings have a evaluation form that we ask the agencies or the participants to complete, letting us know how we did, if they found the training useful, if it was sort of the purpose that it was designed for. Also, a lot of times have our grant managers after trainings will kind of reach out by phone or email to agencies that participated, just to get kind of some more feedback on it that's not on evaluation forms. And then the thing is, again, we continue to communicate with our association to find out what kind of feedback that they've got, either from their webinars and their trainings, and also to see if they've heard anything about our trainings and what's going on with our trainings. Then once we've done that, I flipped the evaluation session. Then once we get all that done, then we do the evaluation of our training that we've done. And we do that is we look at the monitoring results from each agency that we monitor. We try to do 100% monitoring every year. Sometimes an agency will go 2 years without being monitored, but we try for 100% monitoring every year. We'll compare the monitoring results from pre and post training, the most recent result from before we had a training and after we had a training, to identify if whether the things are successful. We also do survey results are compared from year to year to identify any variances. So if maybe last year organizational standards training was identified by 20 agencies, and this year it's only identified by 7, then we can see that we're moving in the right direction with our training. And then also the organizational standards monitoring. We look at every June is when we do all of our organizational standards monitoring, that we have one that we have the exact same picture of all the agencies, what they look like during June, so that whenever we report on the state plan, you know, we're reporting everybody's results from the same point in time. So we'll each year we'll look at the organizational standards monitoring to see how they've moved and what those results are to evaluate the success of our training. And then we circle back and resurvey all the agencies again and start that cycle all over. So about all I got.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Adrian. As mentioned earlier, we'll take questions at the end. So if you have any questions for Adrian, make sure you write them down, and you'll have the opportunity to ask him when we finish. Right now, I am going to turn it over to Sarah Phillips from Vermont. So, Sarah, are you there?
Sure. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
I'm Sarah Phillips. I'm the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity. We have a small state. We have 5 private community action agencies. The office is actually located in the Department for Children and Families, in the Agency of Human Services, which is the cabinet-level agency. Our office also administers the Weatherization Program. We administer a pretty large homeless assistance program that incorporates HUD Emergency Solutions Grant dollars. And we also have some other state funding that supports other initiatives. We have 3 staff, which are 1.5 FTEs to support CSBG specifically, although there's no one person that's only doing CSBG. So the 3 staff include myself, program manager, and administrative coordinator, and the program manager really kind of keeps the ball moving in terms of monitoring, reporting, and grant administration. We receive the small state minimum for funding. We take 5% for admin, 5% for discretionary, and then something that's specific to Vermont is that we do have a state association, but it's an unstaffed association given the size of our state. There's no separate staff for what's called the Vermont Community Action Partnership. We do work very closely with VCAP, and 5 executive directors meet monthly together as an association. So, it's interesting, I chose to focus today on kind of 4 areas that I thought sort of spoke to Vermont's best practices. We're, again, a small state, so we're limited in our ability to provide a lot of really robust training. And so we kind of focus our effort on what's most effective maybe in terms of quality versus quantity. You know, there's some things that I'm not going to talk about today that we do. We view monitoring very much as part of a technical assistance opportunity. We provide a lot of one-to-one technical assistance as needed on CSBG, for instance, the organizational standards. We provide funding for the Northeast Regional Conference. Folks send their staff to, and we conduct webinars in various topic areas. So the best practices, though, that I chose to focus on today was one, our peer work group around performance management, or what we sometimes call just our ROMA work group, and this is really a community of practice model I'll talk about. The second one is an initiative that we have around integrating financial capability services. So all 5 of our agencies receive state funding through our office to financial capability services, so we've focused on providing some training in this area. We do have an annual training conference that we call Poverty Opportunity Training Forum. And then this one is really more an approach to training that we take to kind of strategically include other partners in the training that we provide, so other non-community action agencies. So the first one is our performance management work group, lovingly called our ROMA group. So this is a group that meets quarterly. There's a few staff from each agency that come. Usually the staff who are participating are those that work on their agency's plan or do their reporting. We have a couple EDs that attend, but usually it's program leaders. In a lot of ways, this group that meets is a community of practice model. It kind of becomes a support group for people in agencies who are seen as ROMA champions, but sometimes feel a little isolated in their focus on ROMA because of the multi-service nature of our community action agencies. So this group does work on a lot of technical issues. We don't have a statewide data management system. So this group does help, though, to provide some shared understanding around data and reporting methodology for the report, and I'll make some decisions around aligning statewide measures. But we like to think, anyway, that this group can move beyond just thinking about the report itself, but really kind of share best practices and approaches to making information really meaningful for your board, or meaningful for your staff, or meaningful for external audiences. So this is really about embedding the ROMA process in the agencies and using a peer support model to do that. Next. Thanks. So like I said, we have some state funding to support financial capability services at our community action agencies, include match savings and for enterprise development. And so in some ways, our agencies have really been pioneers and leaders in this field in Vermont. And we recognize that asset building is really a critical strategy in anti-poverty work. So a few years ago, some of you may be familiar with the Administration of Children and Families came out with a guide for integrating financial capability services. CFED, which is now Prosperity Now, has come to Vermont to provide training to our agencies on staff on how to use that guide and how to kind of develop partnerships with other agencies and also within their own agency. So we may have a sort of a program that focuses around financial capability services. How would they integrate that work into other areas of the agency, whether Head Start or other parts? So our part of this was really about including all levels of the agency in that. So we, in kind of committing to integrating financial capability services through partnerships, through doing it themselves, and through just enhancing the work in their own agencies. And so we worked with BCAP, and they embedded this in their strategic plan. We brought some national experts to Vermont. We also worked with agencies to identify their own path to integrating it within their own agency, like I said, and to think about ways to cultivate opportunities within other and like family supportive housing, which is provides supportive for chronically homeless families, so bringing our community action agency to the table to identify ways to integrate these services into that program in partnership with TANF, and also even in weatherization. So a key piece here is that we've done a lot of training and technical assistance on how to do this work, but we've also supported it with some of our CSBG discretionary funds to support demonstration projects. Next. So this is our fourth annual this year, Poverty and Opportunity Training Forum. We have, like I mentioned, a regional conference in northern New England, and then there's also national training opportunities. Those events tend to be really expensive for agencies to participate, and they don't, in that sense, don't get a deep penetration in the agency. So only 2 or 3 people might be sent from agency to participate. We really felt the need to create a one-day event that's free to our agencies to send staff. It's free for them to participate. It's within driving distance, so you don't have the added cost of lodging. And in this way, we really get a pretty large attendance at this one-day event. So although a one-day event is really limited in terms of what you can get out there for training, we focus on providing really, really high-quality training that can spark interest and kind of deepen understanding and create some shared language around our anti-poverty work in Vermont. I have a planning committee to develop this annual event. And you can kind of see here we have 3 main areas that we focus on: cross-sector skill building, incorporating evidence-informed practices, and bringing in some innovative and promising practices from our larger field. So this conference is really focused on improving program design and practice and make sure that the latest research and tools are at our fingertips as a network in Vermont. We really don't bring CSBG or compliance focus into this training. We focus from sort of a larger perspective of how do we end poverty in Vermont and what do we need to do as a field in order to be better at that. So, next. Next. So, and that kind of brings me to this last slide, which is this is an approach that we try and take to our training. So a lot of the sort of more CSBG compliance work we're doing in partnership with our association. Again, our executive directors meet monthly, and we might bring like topic from the organizational standards that we provide a little training at that monthly meeting, or do a lot of one-on-one technical assistance. We have 5 agencies that work well, and there's of course areas for improvement there. So when we're offering more training, we try to take an approach that brings other partners to the table. And so our Poverty and Opportunity Training Forum is a great example of that. How do we bring other community organizations into our conversations and into the training room with us when that's appropriate? And so that approach to training also helps us create really great linkages. So I mentioned the work that we've done to integrate financial capability services into our TANF program in Vermont. And we, in part through joint training of our TANF program staff and our community action agencies in partnership with the CPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, to train them in the trainer on your money, your goals. And so that joint training kind of helps us recognize the leadership of our community action agencies, their expertise and capacity to really tackle these tough issues and create that tight linkage there. So that's another example of just kind of how we use training to deepen kind of partners outside the community action network. So I think that's me.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much, Scott. And leave your questions until after Matt presents, and then you can ask Sarah any questions that you might have. So I turn it over to Matt Fitzgerald in Virginia.
Jackie, everybody, can you hear me?
Hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. So I am the Community Service Program Manager in the Office on Volunteerism and Community Service. Our agency, we're located within the Virginia Department of Social Services. Gives us a unique human service kind of background to some states, I guess. With 31 agencies, there's 22 private, 6 public, and 3 statewide. I'll just go a little more about the statewide in a little bit. We have CSBG staff. That's not all full-time, but have to do work on CSBG. And for our state, we have about a $10 million budget. We do get 5%, of course, for admin, but we don't receive any funds that we can use for training or technical assistance. By state code, that all goes directly to the 3 statewide organizations that I was talking about. Those statewide organizations, 2 of them grant money back out to other community action agencies. So, yep, you're good. Thanks. You can go forward. Some things that I wanted to touch on today, talk a little bit about our annual technical assistance survey, talk about a training task force, technical assistance training task force that we started a couple years ago that involves all agencies, a bunch of different agency staff. The way that we coordinate trainings that includes very in-depth regional trainings that we put on, assigned agency representatives, which keep us in contact with agencies so we know their technical assistance needs, methods of getting out information, their webinar, newsletter, and website, the way that we present at all our state association meetings, and then an interesting idea that has really helped out a lot in our state, which is regional cooperatives between agencies. Go for it, please. So for the annual training and TA survey, do that survey after sitting down with our state association and hoping to develop the types of questions we're going to ask. We do it through SurveyMonkey because that's a pretty inexpensive tool, and it allows us to coordinate answers and pull out information pretty easily. We do that every March or April, and we ask several different things on that survey. We ask for all the needs that are related to the CSBG activities in one separate section, and then we also have questions related to staff and professional development, which may be used by us or may actually go back to the agency for their own usage. And then we have questions on kind of general technical assistance type things that people might need for technical assistance. We develop the information from that we use to put our RPIC plans together with the state association, and of course now the new combined training and technical assistance plan that we do with them. You can go forward, please. For 2 years, we've had a task force that we put together to have 6 to 8 members from the different agencies, and it's done by some region so that we have representation from all different sizes and areas of the state. And that task force usually meets through teleconference, but we do have 2 in-person meetings at our state association meetings as well. They are actually the ones that help us put together the survey now, instead of in the past where it was just our staff. So that it has helped us a lot to kind of create the questions, especially when we want the more type where we list a certain type and say 1 through 5 what type of training, so we're able to get a lot better information from that. The task force members also go out to their specific regions. Well, they don't go out physically, but reach out to their peers and collect a bunch of different best practices and resources from those different agencies, and those are then housed on one of our new websites, and I'll go through the website in a minute. And we also take information. The state association sends out quite a bit from CAPLAW and Community Action Partnership with information from NASCAS, and we collect all of those different resources and have those in our Technical Assistance Training Center there on the website. And then that task force, the other key task that they have is they, through and collected, come up with thoughts on new templates or resources that can be developed either by our office or someone else, and so that information helps us to target things that we want to come build as an office or go out and have someone else do, because we get a lot of interns and things like that, and they can take a project and work on it. The Technical Assistance Training also works with a very specific committee that sits on the state association, and that task force feeds information to that committee, so that state association committee can then identify training that the state association may want to put on. Forward, please. So things that we've done in the last 2 years that has been very successful. Office has focused on developing more in-depth training we have now put on 3 actual trainings, one on board governance, one on assessment, and one on strategic planning. And they've been 60-hour trainings, like a full-day training that included a lot of different group work, things like that. Gone out and done regionally. So we've done 4 regions, so that's that training 4 times each year. So by doing it regionally, we've had about 30 to 35 participants in each region, not just staff. We've actually had board members and things that come. And because of the type of training that it is, the intensive all-day training, we're able to collect a lot of information from that has then led to us being able to develop other specific training. So, for example, we did the needs assessment training. We have planners and others that were this was like on the comprehensive community needs assessment, similar to the document that's on the NASCAS website. I mean, it talks about a year-long process with surveys and quantitative and qualitative information, all that. So for that training, we had a lot of feedback on the need for facilitation training to be able to go out and do those community meetings and forums and even the key informant interviews. So from we were able to identify that need, and then part of our state extension service for a training that our office split the cost of with us, the association, and then the agencies even paid a third because they recognized they needed the training. So it's all built off of our one-day training. The agency representatives piece is basically we assigned each agency to someone in our office. Again, we have 31 agencies. So we have 3 primary staff that are responsible for this. They're not even split. We have primary staff that work with all the privates and 1 statewide each. And then we have 1 staff person that works with all the publics, and they also have 1 statewide. And we did it that way because the publics have such different training technical assistance needs. You can go forward, please. The point of the agency representatives is that every agency knows that that's their first point of contact. They have regular contact with that individual because they do a monthly call with them. I will tell you that as this has evolved over the last 2 years, that month call has become sometimes a bi-monthly if both parties agree that we don't need to talk on the phone, and there's just an email shared back and forth. But there is monthly contact for sure. And when it is a call, there's an agenda, there's specific things that are set to be discussed. There's always organizational standards on every single one. And there's always some set of notes and a follow-up that happens after that call. And so all things related to applications, reporting, things that might be needed for training and technical assistance, those are all transmitted in each one of those calls. So we have that information right away. And it also has helped because that will identify specific areas that may need attention, both for monitoring or training technical assistance. So it's allowed us to provide that training and technical assistance in advance of monitoring. And I think as much as you have to set aside 30 minutes every month, we've had really good feedback from agencies that have made those calls, and I think that it is time used wisely. Okay, communication methods. We have 3 main ones that have really helped us. We started a monthly newsletter a little over a year ago, I think. We do a lot that we used to send out in emails are in the first part of that newsletter, so it'll be lines that are coming up, specific things that are going on in our office. But there's always technical assistance and training information. There may be linked webinars, or there may be articles or resources that have been pointed out to us by people in the field or that we have found over that month. And then we all have some agency stories and things that we put in there. And those agency stories help because a lot of times they are dealing with specific issues that be prevalent in the community, in the network at that time. We do monthly webinars, but we keep those really short. We try to make them 15 to 20 minutes, very specific topic. So it may be as simple as something to do a survey, very specific piece of a survey, like how to understand open-ended questions or something like that. They're identified from usually the monthly calls. But again, they're short, quick hitters. We have 2 websites. One of them is our regular state government website, but we've been able to utilize another website that's through a foundation that we work with. And that information is a little bit easier to keep up with, and we can put things on that website that we couldn't on our state website. And so we maintain all the Training Technical Assistance Task Force information is on that website, and we actually have a back end of that we can have protected, that agencies can go on and put their own resources and share with each other there as well. So that's been pretty successful. Please. Every one of the state association meetings, there's 4 each year, but there's 2 that are substantial. There's a legislative in January and then a June meeting. So we conduct our own trainings there. We have an on-staff implementer and an on-staff trainer. We provide Roma training sometimes at those, but we also do training specific to specific elements of work standards or needs assessment or strategic planning. Any of this. The last one that was just last week, we actually brought an ACSI to it, and they presented sessions on my annual report. We all currently have a staff person that's a CPA too, and they lead a peer group at state association meetings for fiscal staff, and we also co-chair the peer group that works with the state association. So that's a very specific group of people, like right now, all Roma implementers. We lead at meetings. So this has been successful in a couple of regions, and we're trying to grow it out in the others. So we've had 5 to 6 agencies in each region that coordinate together, have actual phone calls where they talk about the needs in their agency beyond just CSBG, just broadly. Like someone might have one where they want to learn how to develop outcomes, something like that. They work together to identify the specific needs and then talk where locations and what trainers might be needed. And then our office helps to have resources, trainers, and locations with them. They've done kind of the coordination on their own. And so in the resources end, we've identified other state agencies that might have capacity grants or grants out there that they can apply to. And they've applied as a region to get funds on their own trainings. And sometimes we provide funding with the state association for identified trainings. Help to create coordination between the groups, and the attendance at the trainings is a lot higher because they're usually putting in some money into them as well. So it's cost, and usually they share the hosting of the different meetings around, whereas since it's in a region, it's not usually more than an hour to an hour and a half from one of them. That's been really successful. That might be my last slide.
Okay, thank you, Matt. That was great. So before we get to your questions, I just wanted to see on your screen now the contact information for Adrian, Sarah, and Matt. So if you have any specific questions after you leave the webinar today, then you have their contact information. So please go ahead and reach out to them. But while you're thinking of questions, we did have a question come in, and Matt, this says specifically for you, how did you engage your community action boards around the board governance training? Oftentimes we low involvement by board members training because of the time restrictions. So how were you able to make this successful?
The first key point was the making it regional, so it was no location was more than an hour to an hour and a half max away from where the board members resided. And then, to be honest with you, the key has been executive directors. The trainings, board governance training is requested from us all the time by agencies. They want us to come and do some specific type of board governance training. So we'll go out and do an hour here, an hour there. But the long one-day ones require that the work with the board for their understanding of kind of the quality and content. That if you go to this, you're going to get what we would get in different shorter sessions. So we've been able to get pretty good attendance, but it's usually 2 agencies that no board members come. So I don't want to make it sound like it's 100% successful. It is still an issue. no doubt. Getting board members to come out for a full day. So we do out and do, so we go to board meetings at least one a year, if not two, and we talk at those meetings about the importance of the trainings before we go out.
Great, thank you, Matt. Okay, I don't see, are there any other questions that you might have? If you have questions, you're all unmuted, so you can just go ahead and ask your question, or alternatively, you can also ask your question through the chat window, and we'll be able to sit there. We've been getting some good ideas from the presentations from Sarah, Matt, and Adrian that you're able to think about incorporating into your activities in your state office around training and technical assistance. Any questions? While you're still thinking and contemplating, let me just move on to, well, here's our question and answer slide. Let me move on just to remind you, we are having the final webinar of this best practice series is coming up. It is scheduled for, I think that's next Monday, January 29th from 3 to 4:30 Eastern Time, and we're combining those two topic areas, the use of discretionary funds and the distribution of funds. Both of those areas are going to be the focus of the call next week.
I just thought of one other thing on the question that was asked. One of the other points I would make too is that the training that we did, the full day one, it was not CSBG specific. It included information on tripartite boards and things, but it was really a board governance training broadly, and I think that helped attendance as well because it was really about being a good board member out of just a tripartite board member.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, other questions? Kate, did you have anything you want to add before we conclude the webinar? Kate, praise yourself again. Okay. I'm hearing nothing from Kate. I'm going to go back again to the contact information slide so you can reach out to the presenters. And of course, the presenters' contact information is also on the NASCAP's website, of course, under state contact, so you'll be able to find it there as well. We will be sure to include this recording as well as the slides that in the Director's Digest that will go out on Wednesday. So if you have other staff in your office who weren't able to attend today and you'd like to share this information with, then you're able to do that. And I'm going to take one last look and see if there are any questions. And I don't see any questions. Well, again, I hope you found this conversation fruitful and you're able to leave with some good ideas and some good strategies and examples of things that you can integrate into your state office training and technical assistance practices. Have a great afternoon, and I hope to see you all next Monday. Thank you, Matt and Adrian.